Muscles, 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 muscles.
Line of Judah muscles.
Yeah.
Muscles. Okay. This is my fourth attempt at recording this video. So far, every other attempt has had something or another occur in which I had to start completely over. So, Yeshua, I ask you to please be with us. Allow me to be able to record this video. Just please. Please, Lord. I worship you and I thank you, Yeshua. I praise you in all your glory. In your holy precious name, I dedicate this time to you. Amen. Maybe that's what I was missing. I didn't get to the prayer soon enough. Okay. We're going to talk about a very sensitive topic. Turn the other cheek. Many Christians take it way out of context. Many Christians use it as a license to say that they're not going to lift a finger to help anybody ever. Turn the other cheek means that if you see somebody getting robbed or a woman getting raped, you're supposed to turn the other cheek. You're not supposed to help them. What? I've had people on Facebook who live in third world countries, who are in groups that I've been in, tell me that even if somebody comes into their village and is going to use an AK-47 and murder everybody in that village, that God doesn't want them to fight back, and that they will just allow it to happen because obviously it was the plan of God for all of those people to die. What? I've been awestruck multiple times by hearing this same response. So, question of the day. Does God love actions of rebellion against evil? Should we, as the body of Christ, not just resist evil, but combat it? It's a common question today, especially with these evil times that we live in. We have a government that promotes evil and the ritual sacrifice of the unborn en masse on a daily basis. There's a spiritual war going on behind the scenes. But, as with all spiritual wars, it has ever so slowly crept into reality. The war we face is now not just a spiritual one. The attacks on those who follow Yeshua have become more and more brutal. We face spiritual battles daily. Now, though, in order to be faithful openly or to gather in the name of Yeshua, it is oftentimes against the law. With restrictions on gatherings, states banning any assembly at all, and the non-Christian crowds openly attacking us, the battle has become all too real. So what does the Bible tell us? What example do the people of the Bible set for us to follow? Did they bow down and stop worshiping? Did they listen to anti-Yod-He-Vav-He laws? When the pressure was on, did they deny Yeshua and worship another god or symbol? In order to answer these questions and more, we must take a walk through biblical history. Let's begin a journey together, shall we? Our first stop along this journey is Moses. Moses lived and led around 1550 BC. Exodus 1:22. So Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, every son who is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive. Commonality, when somebody is born with the intention, where God's intent is for them to lead a great people, evil stuff happens to them. Most times it begins with death, ordering the death of a bunch of children. Not in every case, but in a very few special cases. Moses is an example, and Yeshua is another prime example. Pharaoh wanted to kill all the people to kill Moses. Herod wanted to kill all of the kids to kill Yeshua. And then, I don't know if anybody really goes into apocryphal books, but in the books of Jasher and Jubilees, it shows that Nimrod wanted to kill all of the people to kill Abraham. Wanted to kill all of the kids to kill Abraham because of a sign in the heavens that showed that Abraham was to be born. So, Exodus 2, 1 through 10. And the man of the house of Levi went and took as wife a daughter of Levi. So the woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes for him, dabbed it with asphalt and pitch, put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the river's bank. And as the sister stood afar off to know what would be done to him, then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, and her maidens walked along the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. Sent her maid to get it. Even in the Bible, rich people having maids do stuff for them. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. So she had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then the sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" And the Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Yes." So the maid went and called the child's mother. Then the Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moshe, or in common tongue, Moses, saying, "Because I drew him out of the water." We see an order given by the governance of the land that Moses' mother defies. Without her disobedience to the Pharaoh, Moses would have never led God's people through the Red Sea and through the wilderness. But wait, there's more! I sounded like a salesman. Exodus 2, 11 through 15. Now it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, that he went out to his brethren and looked at their burdens. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that way, and when he saw no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Let me pause for a second. Can you imagine? Stick. That's pretty much how it went. I'm pretty sure. And I'll admit, being a cage fighter, there have been times in which I've happened upon something horrible happening. I'm not going to explain directly what was occurring. And the truth of the matter is the person was doing something very vile to a woman, and I did not allow it to happen. And I rearranged his face a little bit and then held him there for the police to arrive. I don't feel like I did anything wrong. I don't feel like it was evil. I don't feel as if God was mad at me for defending someone. And in multiple instances, I have defended someone physically, and I do not believe that God was mad at me for it. And I don't believe God would get mad at you for defending someone either. So, I'll continue. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 Hebrew men were fighting. And he said to the one who did the wrong, "Why are you striking your companion?" And then he said, "Who made you a prince and judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" So Moses feared and said, "Surely this thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. Okay, so never in my instance did I do something to protect someone and then was fearful afterwards. In most instances in which I did something, I actually sat there holding the person in a chokehold or some sort of joint manipulation control, and waited for the cops. So I didn't have to deal with any repercussions because what I was doing was justified. In one instance, the cop thanked me. Okay, I'd also like to preface this that I would not be talking about this if we were not on this subject. Just so that you guys all know. Not patting myself on the back in any way. And I'm sorry, but I typically don't like talking about things that I've done like that. Or, honestly, good things that I have done at all. Because in the Bible it says, if you give to the poor, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. And so typically that's the motto I live by. But in this instance, it was a prime example of something similar occurring. So that's why I used it as an example. I want you all to know that I was not patting myself on the back, and I do apologize if it came off that way. Here is an excerpt from an archaeological page dedicated to ancient Egyptian crime and punishment. In ancient Egypt, crimes are acts against other persons or the state. Punishments are official, not private sanctions against persons who committed crimes. The term for crime is bitithri. A capital crime is bitithri. Great crime worthy of death. Egyptian sources for crimes and punishments are extremely diverse, but are primarily texts such as royal decrees, administrative texts such as court proceedings, and private texts, including biographies or letters. Most legal texts are from the Ramesside period, dynasties 18 through 20, which make comparison with other times difficult. A written criminal code does not exist. Crimes against the state, or better, the king, comprise treason, lèse majesty, and desertion. Crimes against other human beings include killings, injuries, adultery, rape, robbery, and theft. There is no Egyptian word for treason, only paraphrases such as great crime worth of death, great abomination of the country, or abomination of all gods. The best known case of treason is the harem conspiracy against Ramesses III, which aimed to raise a prince to the throne. Although the king was murdered by the cutting of his throat, the plot failed. A special tribunal was established and the culprits punished. The worst culprits were sentenced to death. Others were allowed to commit suicide. Wow. Others were sentenced to have their nose and ears cut off. A case of treason unrelated to the harem is directed against Thaban high priest. Against the Thaban high priest Osorkon, the later king Osorkon III of the 23rd dynasty. Osorkon himself kills the captured perpetrators on the spot and burns the corpses. A judicial trial does not take place. So, we see that it is a penalty of death to kill another Egyptian during the period of Moses' life in Egypt. The Hebrew people were slaves. To protect a Hebrew against an Egyptian citizen via deadly force, it was considered treason against the dynasty, or a high crime worthy of death, because there was no treason at the time. In Moses' life, there were many laws made that he had to directly ignore in order to fulfill God's plan. Does God know everything? Yes. So he would know that Moses had to ignore the man-made laws in order to gather God's people. So the root of Moses' ignoring the anti-God laws that were in place was the preordained destiny God had built special for Moses. It was God's plan for Moses to rebel against a tyrannical king. Jump forward 100 years, and we find another interesting character, Joshua, who, by the way, was a soldier before he was a leader. Numbers 13:1-2. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send a man, every one a leader among them. From the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea the son of Nun." Numbers 13:16-18. These are the names of the men who Moses sent to spy out the land. And Moses called Hoshea the son of Nun Joshua. Then Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said to them, "Go up this way into the south, and go up to the mountains, and see what the land is like, whether the people who dwell in it are strong or weak, few or many." Numbers 13:30-31. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are able to overcome it." So they came back from spying, and all the people that they sent out as spies were like, "Oh my gosh, we are grasshoppers in their sight. They'll kill us." Joshua and Caleb are like, "God is with us. Let's go kill him." My kind of dude. But the men who had gone up with him said, "We are not able to go against the people, for they are stronger than we." Numbers 14:6-10. But Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes. And they spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, The land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us into the land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their protection has departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. And all the congregation says to stone them with stones. Now the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of meeting before all the children of Israel. So we see that everyone is scared to enter the land of Canaan. But Joshua and Caleb, who are from the tribes of Ephraim and Judah, don't care that they are scared and want to just go fight for the Lord. The popular vote, though, attempts to have them stoned. But we all know what happens. Joshua leads a conquest that spans many different cities and lands. They win. And by that victory, they are able to enter the land of Canaan. But Moses is not able to go. Many say Joshua is a type of Yeshua, a prophetic parallel. Joshua led a God-ordered conquest and eradicated evil men in high places. Joshua fought corruption and evil and won. God had his back, and by Joshua knowing God had his back, he was able to fight with a carefree and determined attitude. He did not fear the enemy because of Matthew 10-28. 28, and do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. And Psalm 56, to the chief musician, set to the silent dove in distant lands, a Michtam of David, when the Philistines captured him in Gath. Be merciful to me, O God, for man would swallow me up. Fighting all day he oppresses me. My enemies would hound me all day. For there are many who fight against me, O Most High. Whenever I am afraid, I will trust in you. In God I will praise his word. In God I have put my trust. I will not fear. What can flesh do to me? All day they twist my words. All their thoughts are against me for evil. They gather together, they hide, they mark my steps when they lie in wait for my life. Shall they escape by iniquity? In anger cast down the peoples, O God. You number my wanderings. Put my tears into your bottle. Are they not in your book? When I cry out to you, then my enemies will turn back. This I know, because God is for me. In God I will praise his word. In the Lord I will praise his word. In God I have put my trust. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? Vows made to you are binding upon me, O God. I will render praises to you, for you have delivered my soul from death. You have not kept my feet from falling, that I may walk before God in the light of the living. This is known as what's called an imprecatory psalm, where he is calling for destruction of his enemies. We're allowed to do that, you know. We are. We're allowed to do that. And I'm going to be honest. In a few instances, I have been on top of mountaintops, and I have fallen to my knees, and I have called out, yelling for God to destroy the evil on this planet, to destroy it. And if it be his will, please let me take a part in that. Please. Please, 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 please. I still pray that. I want it so bad. Evil runs rampant on this planet. Good is now called evil. Evil is now called good. I want it gone. I want it gone. Now remember, Joshua lived before these two books were written. Matthew was written between 28 and 31 AD. Psalms was written, or this psalm specifically, in 105 BC. Joshua took a stand, he fought for evil, and did so without fear. The other spies said, "We cannot go. There are giants in the land." Joshua, knowing God was with him, got excited at the prospect of killing giants, because he knew God would protect him and the army. Taking another leap through time, we land on Daniel. Daniel lived 620 BCE to about 530 BCE. He lived through multiple wars and rose to power in 3 separate kingdoms. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, this is Daniel 1, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with some of the articles of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, with a little g. And he brought the articles into the treasure house of his God, with a little g. Then the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel, and some of the king's descendants, and some of the nobles, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed for them a daily provision of the king's delicacies, and of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them, so that at the end of that time they might serve before the king. Now from among these of the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them the chief of the eunuchs gave names. He gave Daniel the name Belteshazzar. To Hananiah, Shadrach. To Mishael, Meshach. And to Azariah, Abednego. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself, defying an order by the king. An order had been given by the king that went against what Daniel knew was good in the sight of the Lord. So he refused, just like I would. The word used in the Hebrew for requested is bakash. To seek, require, desire, exact, request, to require, exact. It wasn't a question, but more so, Daniel said no and refused to eat of it. Daniel defied a direct order of the king. It was punishable by death. For not just him, but the eunuch who said no, or that he said no to as well. Someone else's life was on the line, but rather than give in for the sake of his own life and the life of those around them, he chose to rebel. He chose to not kneel. Come what may, Daniel was going to resist evil. Daniel 3:4-6. Then a herald cried out, "To you it is commanded, O peoples and nations and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, and the psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the gold image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of a fiery furnace." So, worship the image of King Nebuchadnezzar. Worship the image of the beast. You say no. You say no. And not only do you say no, but you open your windows and you kneel down and you worship Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh in front of everybody. And if they're going to cut your head off, they're going to cut your head off. Don't be afraid, but do it anyway. Okay, so a law was made by the king that went against the word of God. Everyone must worship the image of the king or be killed. 3 men refuse the ungodly order: Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. Daniel actually isn't present for this instance. Daniel 3:12. There are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image which you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and fury, gave the command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the gold image which I have set up?" I'd have been like, duh. Now if you are ready at the time you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, and the psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, and you fall down and worship the image which I have made, good. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands? The God of Israel, the living God. Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. I mean, who else? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, and here's the funny part, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is not only able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, but he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up." Yeah, my kind of dudes. My kind of dudes. Knowing that defiance will result in possible death, they refuse anyway. Notice they do so in style as well, saying, "Well, we don't have to answer you." Defiance with courage and a little humor. And sprinkle some humor on there. That's what I'd do. And because of their courage, in the face of death, God protected them. Yeshua walked in the fire with them. Fast forward some years after Nebuchadnezzar's death, and we come to Belshazzar. Nebuchadnezzar's great-great-grandson married in a tyrant of a king. Daniel 5. Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine in the presence of the 1,000. While he tasted the wine, Belshazzar gave the command to bring gold and silver vessels, which his father, great-great-grandfather, Nebuchadnezzar, had taken from the temple which had been in Jerusalem, and the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. Then they brought the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple of the house of God, which had been in Jerusalem, and the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. Who knew? They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze and iron, wood and stone. Gold and silver, precious metals, they make coins. Bronze and iron, they make like fancy dishes and things like that. Wood and stone, well, stone like diamonds, and wood, paper, money. I mean, this is literally a list of things that people worship nowadays. In the same hour, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. And here's the funny part. I love this part. Then the king's countenance changed, and his thoughts were troubled at him, so that the joints of his loins were loosened, and his knees knocked one against another. Polite terms in the King James, but his knees smote one against another, and the joints of his loins, his bowels, he defecated himself. That's how scared he was. He pooped himself. I mean, yeah. Bible's pretty straightforward about that. King James makes it a little more polite. So, the king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. The king spoke, saying to the wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and tells me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple, and have a chain of gold around his neck, and he shall be the third ruler in the kingdom." Now, that's a very telling bit of information. Third ruler in the kingdom. That means that he wasn't the first ruler. The highest rank that he could give was third ruler because he was second ruler, which means that he was essentially a vassal king under another ruler. Verse 6 is a King James verse that is translated politely to say, "He pooped himself and his knees shook." That's pretty much what it should say. He is so scared that when Daniel comes to give the interpretation, he is willing to give Daniel anything he wants to just interpret the words. Daniel's response is hilarious. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, "Let your gifts be for yourself, and give your rewards to another. Yet I'll still read the writing to the king and make known to him the interpretation." Again, the defiance of Daniel in the face of a tyrant. Daniel then goes on to say, "Nebuchadnezzar, now that was a king. not you, but your grandfather, was a mighty ruler. I'm paraphrasing. Fast forward again, and Cyrus takes over Babylon. And in comes another kingdom, in which Daniel finds himself having to disobey another anti-Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh law. Daniel rises to power again in another kingdom. Daniel 6, 1-3. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be over the whole kingdom, and over these 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one, that the satraps might give account to them, so that the king would suffer no loss. Then this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and satraps, because of an excellent spirit that was in him, and the king gave thought to setting him over the whole realm. That probably pissed some people off. Then the lawmakers went to entrap Daniel. Daniel 6, 4-8. So the governors and satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find no charge or fault, because he was faithful, nor was there any error or fault found in him. Then these men said, "We shall not find any charge against Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God." All the governors of the kingdom, and the administrators and satraps, the counselors and visors, have consulted together to establish a royal statute, and to make a firm decree, that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days, except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish this decree, and sign it, and sign the writing, so that it cannot be changed, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which does not alter. It's very telling. So, Darius was fond of Daniel, obviously, and in this specific kingdom, if the king made a law, he himself couldn't go and undo that law. That was now law. And if he went and tried to undo that law, he would be stripped of his power, and somebody else would be made to lead. That was just a common practice of this Persian Empire. But again, Daniel is a man of God, and he doesn't care about man-made laws. He only follows the law of God. So Daniel makes a statement. Daniel 6:10. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, and he went home, and in his upper room, with his windows open towards Jerusalem, so he opened his windows, got down and knelt on his knees 3 times that day, and prayed, and gave thanks before his God, our God, the God, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, as was his custom since early days. And if it's your custom, do the same thing. Daniel goes home, opens his windows, and loudly proclaims praises to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh for the world to see. He makes a display of defiance against a tyrannical law. It wasn't in secret, it was open and displayed for everyone to hear and see. The same thing should be true for anybody that is having the mark forced on them. Don't. Just don't. When the time comes, just don't. Fight back. Fight back. The lawmakers, in subsequent verses, even state that Daniel openly rebelled against the law, and they plan on enacting of justice against the man of God. I'm sure Daniel knew exactly what would occur. He did it anyways. A prime example for today's times. To save space, I will point out other examples in bulletin format. Jeremiah defies the king and is thrown in jail. The Maccabees take up arms against the Macedonians and kill Antiochus due to tyrannical rule. Yeshua defies the man-made laws of the Pharisees and does things like healing on the Sabbath, or refuses to wash his hands before a meal. Paul preaches the gospel in Rome, despite the law of Caesar Nero that calls for the death of any who share the message of Yeshua. It is echoed throughout the entire Bible. Do not follow laws that go against God's word. If a law is made that you have to take the mark, don't do it. Fight back. Just fight back. It's the truth. Just fight back. God is with you. Just like Joshua, there are giants in the land. Yes! We get to kill giants now because God is with us. What does this information say to us living in the world now? If a law is made that you cannot worship, do so anyways. If a law is made that you must worship another image other than God's, don't do it. Defy that law. If a law is made that you must receive a mark or die, know that God is with you and defy that law. Just remember, we are strong, but only with Yeshua. We can fight, but only with Yeshua. Be a Joshua. Be a Daniel. Be a Maccabee. Fight. Hope you guys enjoyed this, 35-minute and 30-second video. Praise Yeshua. Hope this gets to you well. And I hope you see what is in this video. Praise Yeshua and thank you all.